Welcome into the Owner to Owner podcast. Very pleased to welcome in today Stephen Greenwood, who's the Global CEO of Valloop, and Hunter Page, Australian Director of Valloop. We're going to talk about employee ownership, the opportunities, threats for business owners, for employees, for economies, in fact. There's staggering numbers of SMEs set to transition or not over the next 10 years. There's plenty of research around on that. So, Stephen, do you want to tell us a little bit about what Valloop does and your personal motivation for kicking off this transformative way to transition businesses?
Sure. I've been involved in a small to medium-sized enterprise since I left my university studies. You know, that's 35 years or so in SME analytics, SME lending, SME insuring, SME transactions, M&A, and was heavily wrapped up in the brilliant new opportunity that both the Australian government, the UK government, and the Americas governments provided to allow the private sale and purchase of an SME business. And this law came in all of the above countries like 1980, 1981, and they started off as being the management buyout, if you remember that old style management buyout, the MBO. And, fabulous. Just shows you the demand for private sale and purchases. That market grew to by 2007 to, in the UK, just under 50 billion annually of SME sales, private sales from one private group of shareholders to another private group of shareholders. Brilliant demand. And that was before the Silver Tsunami, which we're in right now. Millions of businesses coming for sale. In the global financial crisis, 2010, all of the capital products that were supporting this brilliant private sale and purchase all just fell apart. They all just disappeared through no fault of their own, actually. The debt was removed. All the banks removed debt, cash flow lending. Private equity went into the mid-market and stopped doing SME. The best product of all, the deferred consideration surety, stopped. So the whole buyout market, Australia included, crashed by 95% because there was no liquidity. And I'd been in the market for long enough to realize, well, actually there were flaws in it anyway, Michael. There was 3 different types, if not 4 different types of capital from 4 different types of institutions trying to come together to do one sale and purchase.
Yeah.
But what was a big realization by sort of 2010, when the new Finance Acts came into play for employee ownership, and Australia soon followed, was that we realized that they were the wrong models anyway. A management buyout is socioeconomically, when you've got 1 or 2 shareholders in a business, they call that closed and exclusive. So it's closed ownership. The shop's locked. There's bars on the window, there's padlocks, and it's exclusive for 2 or 3 people. And when we were transitioning businesses to management team, the result was exactly the same. There was just different 2 or 3 people as the shareholders, and it was still closed and exclusive. So we realized when the new Finance Act came in, they've got this brilliant new employee ownership trust in Australia and UK and beyond, that you can transition a business to open ownership, including everybody, and inclusive. So personal experiences were there was a better way to do it at scale when you consolidate all of the equity, the debt, and the deferred consideration surety in one place. And when you dedicate that capital to one thing, and that's transitioning businesses that include broad-based employee ownership.
About equity and distribution, is that a big driver for you? Because you personally founded Valloop, which is based in the UK. So your personal motivations were to see it not exclusive and closed, but distributing the opportunity more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. And Valloop has morphed into Valloop since I started on this journey in the year 2000. So over 25 years where I've been leading my own organization, it's evolved into what the market needs at the particular point in time. And what the market needs in a particular point in time right now, 2025, is a digital platform to take all of the knowledge, the skills, the resource and the capital at scale directly to employees to give them agency themselves to do this fantastic transition to employee ownership, sale and purchase through the platform with everything that's required. So the time is right for the way to go to market. And the way to go to market with a platform is immediately scalable around the world.
There's millions of businesses around the world. I assume, Hunter, that Valloop in Australia has really kicked off just, in the last 6 months, the Australian director. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Sure. Yes, I'm one of the Australian directors. We were introduced to Valloop, I suppose, about 12 months ago, and the concept of it. And it was really hard for me to believe that it just didn't exist everywhere. And it doesn't. It certainly doesn't exist in Australia. I think one of the, when looking at it, I think one of the things that as an organisation Australia will have to do is get across to people that it isn't sort of too good to be true. That this is the service. There's these products that exist that enable this transition in a I'm not going to say a seamless way, but in a really effective way. And it just ticks so many boxes. We could go through all the statistics. Stephen will be much better at it than me. But the Silver Tsunami, the amount of businesses that have a retiring owner in the next 10 years, the amount of people that those businesses employ, and then the really high percentage of those businesses that are just going to close. So what does that look like? It'll be really interesting. What I fear is, without Valloop being successful, is that the economics won't go away. They'll just flow to really big businesses. What does that do to region, especially? There's multiple regions in Australia that have just been hammered over the last 10, 15 years. What happens when some of these other businesses leave town, the shop, and the jobs, especially the white collar jobs, go to the major centres? So there's that piece of it. There's a huge sort of impact piece to the regions, a social impact piece to the region. It's it obviously sort of assisting people into that retirement phase of their life as they, the Silver Tsunami folks. It's providing a terrific result for them as well. It's one day there'll be measurements. I know Valloop's working on it and has things that they're tracking as well, but we'll be able to look back and say, without Valloop, we think this would have happened and this wouldn't have happened. So it's for me, someone's been involved in impact investing and creating environmental and social good for the last 15 so years. This is just another chapter in that, which is an incredibly exciting part, looking at that grassroots level.
Yeah, we'll shortly get into the sort of the mechanics of Valloop, but I hear very much what you're both saying, and I think it's getting to the point where I think the concept of employee ownership broadly has been around for a long time. The execution or the understanding of it for a lot of small business owners hasn't been there. I'd say some of them even think it's quite complex, and we'll talk about why that you can take some of that complexity away. But as you just talked about, the reason everybody needs to better understand the opportunities here is because we're getting to a point where a lot of these businesses need to go almost first, or at least to think about their employees as the natural buyer, because they know the business and they know the community in which, particularly in the regions, but not just in the regions, in local communities and metro centres. Those businesses are really important. So, but from an owner's point of view, I think it's going to get starker and starker that if you don't properly consider employees as an owner, your other options might be quite limited. The good ones will be tempted to sell up to bigger companies, and that'll just further highlight the difference between the big and the small economies. So if employees as a potential buyer were sitting alongside competitors, financial or strategic buyers 5-10 years ago, for a whole bunch of reasons now, employees, I'd almost put them equal with your, if not number one, in terms of the most likely buyer. So how does Valloop work, and why is it different to what some people might understand as an employee ownership program?
Just picking up on what you both said there, employees are now legitimate buyers, with the support, the knowledge, the capital, the resource that's provided to support the transition to employee ownership is extensive. So absolutely, the business owners now can look in the shop floor and not be concerned, they don't have any money to buy the business. They don't necessarily need it. There's new innovative mechanisms and capital to affect the sale and purchase at fair value. So they are. Yeah,
and that's part of what Valloop does, is really empower both sides through the platform. But I interrupted, Stephen.
Yeah, no, that and absolutely empowering is a great idea. The unique position about the Valloop business is that it's not an advisor, it's not a buyer. It can go directly to the business owner and to the SME and provide all of the tools and the resource and the capital. And we call it agency, to give them direct agency to help themselves make the decisions that they want to, need to, can't make. They just need to understand what they can and can't and shouldn't do to make a successful and sustainable transition to employee ownership. It doesn't mean that we don't work with business brokers and accountants in terms of what transactions they might be looking to complete. But in terms of the model, there's no, you can transaction a sale and purchase with no legal fees. This is real innovation here. It's a fee-free model as well. And not that we don't work with business brokers and introducers who are in a fee structure, but by using the Valloop system, there's no fees in the sale and purchase. It's a subscription model as well. This is the world that we're in right now. We're in a platform economy. The millennial age group make up the majority of the employee base, more than a majority, in fact, of the senior employee leaders who are the managers running the business on behalf of the owners. Having a digital platform, having an app on their telephone, and they pay a small subscription to access everything is our model.
Owners and employees can subscribe to the platform. Pretend there's an owner listening in and they've got a business worth $1 million and they'd like to retire. Their options are to appoint a business broker, wait for a call from a bigger competitor. Oftentimes it's a waiting game, and the typical sales strategies often overlook the potential of the employees as buyers. But in a Valloop-backed transaction, what's in it for the business owner that might be more attractive than the other broader approach?
We were in a think tank. Given the macro scale of what was required, we did a think tank from 2010 to 2015 after the global financial crisis to rebuild the ecosystem, which is now, we're launching now into the global market. Met with two pending baby boomers who were just coming up to a retirement phase. They'd appointed a business broker, a very professional business broker, to sell the business. It'd been on the market for 3 years. They'd had a couple of fairly big organizations take an interest in the business. And whilst the value was a little bit lower than what they were hoping for, the values were way off. It was going to mean a location of the business to a different region.
Oh, we're talking about non-financial values. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So they could have just about lived with the reduction of the value of the business, the sale value of the business, although it was discounted. But they didn't like the values of what was going to happen to the business after. And it's not unusual. A competitor, buying the business system, relocating parts of the business, if not all of it, some redundancies potentially because they've already got a team in advance of a merger. It cost them about $50,000 in your language over this period of time. Around 75 competitors around the world saw the information memorandum as well, so it's quite risky.
Yeah,
the business brokers provide a super role, which is an option to sell to a competitor or a complementary sector. They don't think about the employees, not because they don't want to, they just don't know. They just don't know what's possible. But A traditional owner is going to be experiencing quite an amount of time. Recent statistics were about 80% of them are success. Only 20% of them are a success. So it's time consuming, it's expensive, and it's risky. And you can expect to have a haircut on the valuation as well. Even if they did complete, it would have mean a relocation of the business. The GDP in the region would have gone. There would have been job losses, people migration, and a further strain on the welfare of the local government because of that. So it's a tough thing to occur, certainly to the employees. Sort of inverting
and the
that.
owner, if they're intending to stay where they are, because there's that sense of you've sold us out.
Well, it's not always an enjoyable experience to sell a business to people you've been competing with viciously for 30 years.
Yeah, true.
But it is deeper than that, Michael. You're absolutely right. 9.99 times out of 10, they absolutely love the idea that they can achieve fair value. They can do it discreetly and confidentially. Nobody will know about the transaction until after it's done, so you can control PR. Creating a legacy of employee ownership, which has a statutory minimum expectation life cycle of 125 years, and becoming a hero in the community is something quite special. They generally, part of their DNA is in the business. They love the business. So this helps with this particular business model.
Yeah, Hunter and I, just before you came on, we're chatting about that very thing where a region, Hunter, you can talk about it. It's right on the money.
Yeah, there was an owner contact us from regional Queensland. And, he's getting on. He's in his 80s. He seems like a sprightly fella, but he wouldn't mind retiring. But they employ a lot of professional service people. They employ a lot of blue-collar people as well. The business is sizable. They rely on the suppliers in the area rely on this business. In some cases, it's their major client. Then you've got your lawyers and your accountants and everything else that comes in that is sustained by the commerce that this business brings to the town. And so his plan is to keep on working forever because he's concerned about once if he sells that business. And so I think had he known about Valloop and if there was a solution that tied together the employee ownership a decade ago, he would have sold it a decade ago and he would have been caravanning around Australia or whatever he might have been doing. So it's this, there's a legacy piece in there as well that I think a lot of owners care deeply about, but that's a lot more than just the name on the door or the name on the building. That's that legacy they care about. It's the town and the people and all the things that you could imagine come from all of that.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated that in the work I've done, I'm calling it employee ownership. It's really more like what you described, Stephen, management buyout, where senior team recognise that either the owner comes to them or they recognise that the owner's thinking about moving on. So there's a direct change in ownership at the top. That's one thing. But when this more broad-based exchange of a business between the owner and the senior management team and the whole lot of employees, it's possibly a little bit more complex. Maybe that's one of the advantages of the platform. But the question is the dance, getting to fair value. There's always a bit of negotiation. There's a dance, and it was always quite a challenge to manage that conversation between a selling owner and a buying team of employees. Have you got any thoughts on whether there are better ways to go about that, or is it become a bit more harmonious because both parties recognise this is the best way to do it and the best outcome for us all?
Sure. No, the North Star is just to focus on fair value, and fair value is a mechanism. It's a mathematical calculation, and they're generally multiple based, and they're debt free, cash free. And our job, and you use the word coach. When people are subscribing, whether it's the business owner to assist in a sort of a pre-packaged approach before they approach the senior employee leaders, or it's the senior employee leaders that are coming to us wanting to put a pre-packaged approach before they approach the business owner, they need coaching. I'm head coach on most of the transactions, so in the subscription process, they get access to me and a couple of other people to help coach them through whatever their whatever they're going through. The valuation mechanism doesn't concern me at all. We have to do it in conjunction with the senior employee leaders and give them all of the tools and help them understand what's the right way to go and what's not the right way to go. There are a million ways to do it. And out of the 130 odd transitions I've done in my experience in the SME world, there's never been any fallout on that. And it's been agreed. There's always a way. There's no barrier.
But is sometimes it's the owner initiates it, sometimes it's the employees, and so you might end up coaching one. Do you coach both, or do you coach one or the
Sure, absolutely. But you've got to keep your heart and mind in the right place. And that's in the business itself. Can the business substantiate that value? Can it create an acquisition capital structure that substantiates that value and comfortably service that value? And if it can't, then the bit is overvalued and nobody would do it anyway. So if you keep heart and mind on the business itself, if you look after the business looks after everything else. So that's our prime focus. So I'm relaxed about valuation.
Yeah. Well, it settles, and because I do want to come to come back to that question of what an outgoing owner could contemplate, which is typically deferred compensation over a few years as part of the deal. But come back to that. As the coach, what would you encourage them to do based on those 130? If they have blockages in their own head about this is too hard, what's your advice to them? And then also to employee teams, take out all learning from those 130 engagements to get both sides thinking about it.
The only reason anyone would think that this is too hard is because they just don't know. There's a lack of knowledge in these types of transactions, in the professional services world, in the business owner world, and the employee world. The number one barrier to wide-scale employee ownership is education. And if you look at any academic report, any employee ownership association, anywhere in the world, it's always the number one. Education. So that's what I would say. If you think it's too hard, you just don't know enough. They need to come onto the platform. They need to start subscribing for I don't know what it is, Hunter. What is it, $99 or something a month to have access to everything? And then they'll be guided through all of the answers they need to be comfortable in the questions that they don't know the answers to. It's a system. It's a system and process. It's a tried and tested system and process. And if we all remain on track through the system and process, we'll complete the sale and purchase and transition to employee ownership.
So it's early days in Australia. I was going to say Victoria. In Australia, Hunter, what's your answers of the platform and the interest? It is early days. Interest has been phenomenal thus far, and from really interesting places as well. There's it's come from your standard vanilla sort of owner, got a $5 million business. How would this work for me? I've got a couple of employees that would be perfect. I've been thinking about how they can finance acquiring the business. And so that's great. Join the platform. Private equity funds, venture capital funds that are getting towards the end of life. They might be a fixed term 10-year fund, maybe plus one, but they might have businesses in there that aren't the stellar businesses that are just shooting the lights out and are going to be acquired by that next fund or IPO. Obviously, that market's been dry for a really long time now. So what do they do with those businesses, those unloved ones? So we've had inquiries there. A number of business brokers have contacted us. So the way that the model works is a business broker charges, there's an upfront fee and then they get a fee from the seller. And so then, and that's fine, but this is just another tool in their, they're going to, whether it be a trade sale to a competitor or to a private equity fund or whatever it might be, that's hard work. I don't envy the business broker's job. So in my sort of executive life, I spent a lot of time working with private equity and venture capital and do a lot of capital markets advisory. And that's hard work, even for superstar businesses. And what we're talking about here is these amazing nuts and bolts, salt of the earth, you know what I mean? So, but they're terrific businesses, but they might not be super exciting. And so what does that look like? And so there's been, the interest has come from everywhere. We've had some entrepreneurs contact us
and say, I'd love to buy an engineering business, but I don't want to take on the risk right now. And so it's a bit like a search fund. I don't know if you're familiar with search funds, but sort of more popular in the US, but where they've said, could I go and find an engineering business and work with the owner and the employees and bring that to you? Sure. That sounds interesting. So it's early days. I should probably sort of talk about there. I mean, the interest is enough such that we're looking to employ folks in Australia as well. We're expecting the growth trajectory to be pretty big from here.
Yeah. And Stephen, UK seems to be leading the world in employee ownership. It seems that way, but you're also looking at other economies to expand into besides Australia?
The UK is leading in terms of the speed and the acceleration of number of businesses transitioning to an employee ownership trust. And it's not the biggest country in the world in terms of employee ownership. That's America. 6,500 SME businesses in an ESOP in America, which is a different model. It's more retirement based. So the UK is leading in terms of volume going forward. Europe and Australia are the next biggest markets to grow. And I say that because when the Finance Act in the UK created this brilliant employee ownership trust structure, Australia got hold of it and they ran it through their government procedures and launched it 2 years ago as well. So a credit to Australia, innovation, opportunity. The Australian Tax Office has paid a significant interest in these structures. We have a tax incentive in the UK because they've had time to understand the productivity benefits, the job benefits. And actually they pay more tax, strangely enough, because they outperform companies that haven't got employee ownership. So the UK got tax incentives. The ATO has no tax incentives per se at the moment. We need to get some volume through so they can see it, but they're paying a significant interest. Our goal in Australia, immediate goal, is we need 1,000 transitions into employee ownership. Just to get started, to start producing the stats of increased productivity to the government for future tax incentives. But no, they're certainly up there. They beat Canada as well. Canada was third on the list. Michael, if you're interested, credit to you.
That's a good thing. What's been understood for a long time is that employee ownership has benefits in productivity, keeping jobs in the place where the business currently is. And so all those things stay. And what I'm particularly excited about, and I'd encourage owners who have had that thought about what do I do next with my business, to dig deeper on employee ownership. I can imagine some of them saying, it's when you have a big share plan. It all sounds complicated. And that's, I think, the trust that you talk about in the model now available is a lot more straightforward. Even if an owner didn't quite understand that, I guess it's the encouragement from us all is to talk to somebody about employee ownership. The way I've been, exposed to employee ownership for many years, more in that direct transfer of shares from one party to another. But I suggested an owner who had a business worth $1 million. For me, it is quite stark. It could take years to try and find a buyer. They might get it done over on price. They might not sell. So you just have to put employees in the frame as one of the potential buyers, if not the most likely. From my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, with Valloop, the owner can get fair value. Well, firstly, they get a sale. And if for some owners that's going to mean a lot, put aside the financial things, it is the legacy. It's keeping this business in this place. It's keeping those employers, keeping those suppliers all vibrant and healthy. So that's a huge win. It's also because they'll get fair value, they'll get their money. The thing that I understand is that it's going to involve some portion of deferred compensation. So if it's worth $1 million, they may not get $1 million at settlement. It might be, paid some upfront and some over time, but it is also guaranteed that they get all of that fair value in that time frame.
Yeah. The overall fair value that's agreed is fixed and secured. They'll get a lump of money on day one, or whatever's deferred is fully secured with a deferred consideration, surety, a guarantee, and a deferred consideration. And consideration, obviously, being the price, the value, is not compensation. I wouldn't use the word compensation because nobody's getting compensated for somebody doing something wrong. It's deferred consideration, fixed, guaranteed, deferred consideration. It is the ultimate way to structure a sale and purchase to employee ownership. Why? Because you avoid the need for traditional private equity completely.
But it's that thing that's interesting there is the payment is guaranteed, and that's one thing that Valloop brings, which I don't think's been there before. So an owner can feel extremely confident that they're going to get their money. I've seen other transactions where the owner's left money in the business, but it's not. They might have a legal agreement, a loan contract, or whatever, but it's still risky because the new owners might not run the business as well as the old owner, and so they haven't got the money to pay. And banks have been very reluctant to lend, still think are, just on the goodwill of a lot of small businesses. So this is, vitally important that they're fair value and guaranteed to get the money out of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great product. It really is. And we've got some significant billions of dollars of capacity to provide this sort of collateral security structure around the transitions to employee ownership. As long as the outcome is employee ownership, we've got all of the capital that we need available for the business owners and the employees. As long as the structure suits the SME business, and we work intensely with the senior employee leaders about creating the ultimate capital structure. They have a low cost of finance in terms of an acquisition capital structure, so they're easy to service compared to other capital structures. Most importantly, we have 100% of the ownership on the table to democratically distribute between the people that matter, senior employee leaders with direct ownership, employees, all of them in a collective employee ownership trust structure, and Valloop who provide everything to affect the sale and purchase. So it's interesting, as long as the outcome's employee ownership, anything is possible. Yeah. And this is where the significant capital is coming for. It's for this. Yeah, interesting.
It's Hunter and I chatted briefly last week. One of the other things that I want to make this point, employee ownership being such a broad term and understood in different ways by lots of different parties. It can be a combination of two types of employee ownership. Senior employees may take more of the equity, but there's the opportunity for every staff member through a trust to have exposure and an interest in the business. Long story short, every employee in a business can have the opportunity to be an owner of the business in different ways.
Every employee in the business can automatically become a co-owner through these employee ownership trust structures on day one. The general employees, it cost them anything. They don't have to accept the invitation to be part of a beneficiary pool that shares in the vote and shares in the dividend. You have to democratically say this is now available for you and it's set up, but it's up to you if you want to be a part of it or not. That's important.
Yeah,
I've never seen anybody not want to be a part of it, but there you go. You have to give them the choice.
It's democratic
to do that. Yeah.
All right. Look, a couple of things to finish on. The second one is I both want you to pretend you're the head of Australia's Small Business Department and your number one recommendation that you would, or new piece of legislation you'd push through. I'm guessing it might be related to employee ownership trust. But Stephen, particularly with your 130 engagements and the momentum that's got in the UK, which hopefully comes to Australia, what is some of the great story of a business and employees that where it's transformed lives, the economy, the local community, the business itself? Your favourite one that you'd like to share with us?
Well, my favourite one is John Lewis PLC. If I'm honest, it's the third largest company in the world with employee ownership, and I'm a super fan of their employee ownership trust structure. Really were first movers in democratic ownership. 3,000 employees are beneficiaries in the an employee ownership trust. It's worth noting that in these trusts, the brilliant thing about what happened with the new finance acts is the employees don't own the shares in their own name. You're going to become a beneficiary by having an employment contract of an equal share of the dividend, but they don't own it in their own name. So employees can come and go, they leave, and they fall outside the beneficiary pool. Somebody joins, they fall inside the beneficiary pool. As long as they're employed, they get an ongoing dividend, share, and a vote. For forever. And why specifically that's one of my favorites is the trust deed that this organization has integrated has now been micronized for the SME business. So whether it's got 10 employees or 25 employees or 250 employees. So that was groundbreaking and set the scene for the employee ownership industry around the world, because the UK government accepted the employee ownership trust in legislation to roll it out. Australia followed, Canada followed, Europe is following, and we already had a trust in America that was created in 1780. So we've just dusted that off and made it into an employee ownership trust as well. So for me, the John Lewis organization set the standard for what employee ownership is.
All right. Hunter, I know you're going to have to head off shortly. You know our local political environment. What would your priority be for pushing us closer to a more sustainable and fairer, more vibrant small business economy?
Well, I'd like it to remain not political, employee ownership. I don't want to be a footballer. I don't want to see it be a football in that. I think looking at the tax structure and having some really clear guidance around how that flows through will be, and as Stephen says, it's going to require data. So we're going to need more companies to have done this. But for that to be done in a really sensible manner, I don't pretend to be the expert in that, Michael, but I'm sure Stephen and others, and actually there are a lot of experts in Australia. I know Stephen's talked about them before. So seeing a good result there would be key.
But a nice goal though, isn't it, Hunter, to get, when we get to 1,000 employees in employee ownership and we can see productivity, lower absenteeism, greater revenues, greater margin, paying more tax, that's when we might start to see tax incentives. And I think a little step before that, if I had a magic wand, Michael, and I could persuade people to listen to Hunter and I'd say we need a fully sort of continual professional development based, CPD based educational rollout urgently for the professional market, the business brokers, to really help them understand these new innovations. A lot of this research and legislation has been done under the radar, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's a game changer in it. The transition of SME businesses to employee ownership is one of the biggest disruptions, if not the biggest disruptions for the SME sector around the world. So the time is now, and it's our duty, I think, for a major educational rollout. Baroness Bowles of Berkhamsted, she's on our board. She's in the House of Lords on the board of the London Stock Exchange, and an enormous personality and a brilliant mind in terms of employee ownership. If you ask her the question as to what she would do if she ran the Australian Federal Small Business Department, she would say, let's integrate an educational program in the universities, in some business administration or some degree, so they learn about employee ownership at that level before they then go into the big wide world. And at least they can make choices then. Do they want to work in a business that's got employee ownership? Or do they want to set up a startup that has employee ownership at the beginning? So we've got to think about that as the next generation coming through as well.
Yeah, agreed fully. It's the pathways have become more and more about careers and big business, and we need spark from people wanting to be owners. Part owner, and it doesn't have to be whole owner, part owner. So
you see the quality of the university students that's coming out of the university. You wonder who's interviewing who. They are so strong. What are your values? What are you here for? Where's your sustainability policy? Have you got employee ownership? What's the culture like? So it's right time, right place. But we must address education at every level. Employees, senior employee leaders, professionals, business brokers, business owners. Everyone needs to know about it so they've got the option to make the choice.
Yeah.
Employee ownership creates wealth.
Yes,
And
it
that
does.
wealth creates the impact. And I think that'll be my final comment for you today. Everybody wins. Valloop is value loop. Value loops because of all of the value that creates in different aspects of the stakeholder of people involved.
Well, fabulous discussion, Stephen and Hunter. Thank you so much. I'm pumped. I'm ready to hit the road and start talking about Valloop.
Time to make a difference, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity very much. Thank you for the time and keep in touch.